How's it going, you lovely bunch of bakers? I hope you're having a great day so far. Welcome back to another video. Today we're making cheesy pinwheels. Let's get in the kitchen and get started. We have used this type of pastry in the past for creating delicious pain au raisin and pain au chocolat, both of which are super delicious, flaky and sweet. But this time I wanted to try this pastry in a savory application. And cheese of course is always a good option when making pastries, but I wanted to create something even tastier. So I also added some smoked ham, mustard and dill. All of the elements work together to create a super delicious savory treat. So let's get right to it. Let's see what we'll need to make it. We'll need some white bread flour, water, yeast, salt, butter. We'll need some cheese. I used Gouda, but you can use any cheese that you like. Some smoked ham, parmesan, dill. We'll also need some mustard, something mild like deli mustard. We'll use an egg for glazing and we'll sprinkle some caraway seeds on top. But of course you can customize the filling and the topping to your taste. We will need some more butter for creating the layers in the pastry, and it must be frozen because we will need to grate it later on. As for the equipment, we need a tray with some non-stick paper, a bowl, scales, a dough scraper, a temperature probe, a brush, a spatula for spreading out the mustard, a rolling pin for rolling out the pastry, and a grater for grating the butter. Okay, let's make the pastry. It all starts with temperature control. My kitchen was pretty warm at the time, around 25 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm using water that is slightly cooler. I don't want this dough to be too warm. Pour the water in the bowl, add the yeast and the salt, and then give them a quick mix. You want to dissolve the salt and yeast. Then add the butter and finally add the flour. Grab your dough scraper and mix it to a dough. We're aiming for a final dough temperature of around 24 to 25 degrees Celsius, which is 75 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. If your dough turns out warmer, it'll ferment more rapidly. If it's cooler, it'll take longer. So you need to adjust the fermentation times accordingly. The first part of the bulk fermentation will be done at room temperature, but after that, it'll be up to you. You can ferment this pastry in the fridge or make it on the same day. I personally prefer cold fermentation because I can make the pastry in the evening and finish it off on the next day. It is also easier to handle that way. Okay, after a quick temperature check, cover up the dough ball, leave it to ferment for 20 minutes. It is a relatively loose dough, so we will give it 2 folds during the first fermentation stage. Once the 20-minute timer is up, dust the dough ball with flour, pop it out on the table with the smooth side down, then stretch it and fold it over itself while it's going around in a circle. Once it feels nice and tight, flip it smooth side up again, tighten it against the table, that's your fold done. Place the dough ball back into the bowl, cover it up and leave it to ferment for another 20 minutes. Once the timer is up, repeat the same steps as previously. Dust it with a little bit of flour, pop it out on the table, fold it over itself, tighten it and place it back into the bowl for another 20 minutes of fermentation. So a total of 1 hour has passed and the dough looks nice and puffy. We can now move on to creating some buttery layers. Give the dough ball a generous dusting of flour, pop it out on the table, flatten it with your hands and then roll it out with a rolling pin to a large rectangle. Don't worry about measurements, just roll it until it's nice and thin and try to make the edges as straight as you can. Okay, grab the first stick of butter from the freezer and grate it over 2/3 of the dough. Try to spread it out as evenly as possible. Use your dough scraper to clean up any stray pieces of butter from the table and drop them onto the dough. Now dust your hands with flour so the butter doesn't stick to them and then press the butter into the dough. Now grab the side which doesn't have any butter on it and fold it over. Try to make it as straight as possible. If need be, you can pull it and adjust it. Next up, grab the loose piece from the other side and fold that over and adjust it so it's nice and straight. And we have now created our first layers. Now the dough needs to be wrapped up and placed in the fridge to cool down for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes of chilling, pull it out the fridge to perform the second set of folds. We will now repeat the same steps as previously. So drop the dough out on the table, dust it generously with flour and roll it out to a large rectangle. Once you rolled it out to size and made the edges nice and straight, grab the second stick of butter from the freezer and once again grate it in an even layer over 2/3 of the dough. Then grab your dough scraper, pick up any stray pieces of butter from the table, place them onto the dough. Then flour your hands, press the butter into the dough, then pick up the 1/3 of dough which doesn't have any butter on it, fold it over, make sure it's nice and straight, and then fold over the loose piece of dough from the other side. We have a few layers in our dough already, but we need to create more. So from here, roll the dough out to a large rectangle again, and fold it into 3 layers once more, but this time without any butter, and repeat it 1 more time. And now the dough has turned into pastry, with plenty of buttery layers inside. But before we can use it, we need to chill it down 1 more time. So wrap it up and pop it in the fridge for at least 1 hour. but I like to make mine in the evening and finish it on the next day, so I will leave it in the fridge for around 18 to 24 hours. Okay, it is the next day and we can move on to final shaping. And I'm sure that some of you already know what's going to happen. We'll dust it generously with flour and roll it out to a large rectangle. You'll be a rectangle rolling master by the end of it. Okay, place the pastry vertically in front of you. Now spread a nice even layer of mustard on it, but leave a little edge at the top. We'll use that for sealing up the roll. Next step, sprinkle it with parmesan. After the parmesan, lay down an even layer of ham. Then sprinkle the herbs on the ham and finish it off with another layer of cheese. Like I said, you can use any fillings that you like. Different cheese, different herbs, different meat, different sauce. You could make some delicious pepperoni pizza rolls or something. As long as the filling is not too wet, it will work perfectly fine. Okay, there's quite a thick layer of filling on here. To make our job easier when rolling this thing up, we need to press it into the pastry, just like we did with the butter earlier. Dust your hands with flour and just press the filling down. Brush some water on the loose piece of pastry at the top. It'll make it nice and sticky. And now gradually roll this thing up. Start by folding over a little lip at the bottom and then roll it forward and pull it back once in a while to make it nice and tight. If the roll becomes wider than the loose piece of dough in front of it, push it in sideways to make it shorter and then keep on rolling. And once you've reached the end, seal up the roll. Now it's ready to be cut into portions. I like to trim the ends off because they're pretty much empty, but you can leave them on, there's nothing wrong with that. We'll cut this roll into 8 pieces. It'll give us a good portion size. If you rolled up the pastry horizontally instead of vertically, you could cut the log into a bunch of mini rolls. Or whatever you do. Once they're all cut, place them on a non-stick paper lined baking tray and press them down to flatten them. They will puff up and spread out as they ferment and bake, so I decided to put 2 of them on a separate tray. Okay, these things are ready for the final proof. It took me around an hour and a half at around 26 degrees Celsius or 79 degrees Fahrenheit. If you make them on the same day, they may take only 1 hour. You want to preheat the oven during the final hour of fermentation to 180 Celsius, 355 Fahrenheit, fan on. If your oven doesn't have fan, go for 200 Celsius or 390 Fahrenheit. Okay, these things look nice and puffy, they are definitely ready for the oven. Brush them generously with egg all over. You really want to soak them, especially on the top. It will add a nice texture and keep things together. It will also give the crust a nice color. Okay, one last thing before they go in the oven, let's sprinkle some caraway seeds on them. And again, you can use any seeds you like, or don't use any seeds at all. It's up to you. If you do use seeds, gently press them into the pastry. This will really make them stick. Okay, these babies are ready for the oven, so let's get them in there. It'll take around 25 minutes to fully bake. And whilst the first 6 were baking, I placed the other 2 in the fridge so they don't overproof. My oven's just not big enough to bake them all at the same time. Right, once the timer is up and you're happy with the color, get them out of the oven. And there you have it. That's how I make cheesy pinwheels with handmade pastry. These things turned out super delicious, and they look great too. And learning how to make this basic pastry is a great skill, because it can be used in so many delicious applications, and you can find a good few examples in the pastry playlist. And I'm planning to make some more soon, so if you are into that, stick around. There'll be plenty more deliciousness coming up. So what do you think of this recipe? Have you made this kind of pastry before? Let me know down in the comments. If you want to see more videos like this one, click over here. Subscribe to the channel, click right here. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.